Hello, my name is Cami Cook. Welcome to my EDL 854 Module 1, Fiscal Responsibility of School Principals. I am currently the Title I Reading Specialist at Buckland Schools. I was a junior high boys basketball coach. I am junior high and high school girls cheerleading coach. With my job as the Title I Reading Specialist, I am the testing coordinator, pre-K through 5 counselor, mentor teacher for elementary teachers. I am a mom of 3. This picture is 2 years old, so my sophomore son is much taller than this now. I have a going to be 8th grader and going to be a 5th grader. They are all very avid sports fans, so we are able to attend rec sports, junior high sports, and high school sports, which keeps us busy every night of the week. My daughter also does competitive cheer, and the boys do competitive baseball and traveling basketball through the summer. So they play all 3 sports. They're avid sports fans and participants, and so my high school son also dual sported this year in track and baseball, so that was a lot of fun. Kept us very busy. I personally love to golf. That is one of my biggest hobbies, and formerly I was the kindergarten teacher at Buckland Schools before I became the Title I reading specialist. I am going to discuss the evident themes throughout the reading in this module, and the first one I'm going to talk about is school level governance, and how does this theme support student success and achievement. And this kind of comes to wrap as that the principals are able to determine how to use the money to meet their students' unique needs and their school's unique needs. How is this data informed? Studies show that principals can better align spending with school priorities. After all, the principals typically know what's best for the students. In my small school, our superintendent is aware of our needs, of the students and the teachers, but our principal essentially knows where our needs are the most. How does this theme address equitable school resource plans? When I think of a school resource plan, the article that stuck out was the centralized versus decentralized, and the principals are allowing to allocate the funds where they see necessary. It allows the schools to implement high quality teaching and learning initiatives and develop school improvement plans that can exponentially improve student achievement. And we are currently living through this with KISA right now and trying to make as many improvement plans social, emotionally, and financially, and academically as we can to meet the needs of our students. And how does this theme address laws, policies, and regulations? Public school funding comes from a variety of resources, local. I think the reading said 48% of our school budget comes from the federal, 44 is local, and then like property taxes local-wise, and then 8% of public education comes from federal sources, maybe grants, outside sources like that. Things that I have seen my principal do, I don't think much of our financial decisions are left in the hands of our she's our K-8 principal, but she makes a lot of decisions, K-12, but I don't think any of them are on the financial means. I would say the most financial decisions that she makes are our curriculum needs, whether we need a new phonics curriculum or new basals for science. Her and I did make the decision to move towards Fastbridge. I think 3 years ago, we went to a KSCE conference and just determined that we needed to replace our MAP in WEA with Fastbridge, and her and I went to the superintendent and the school board, and we were able to get that done. But day-to-day decisions are not influenced by our principal. Student and adult success and well-being. Increase in teacher wages have been found to be associated with increased student achievement, and that's just, data research, everything backs that up, and it's just presumably because more capable teachers are recruited and retained. Teachers go to where the money is better and where the resources and the buildings are better. How is this theme data informed? 21.7% increase in per pupil spending throughout all 12 school age children years for children from low income families is large enough to eliminate the education attainment gap between children from low income to non-poor families. So, and yet high poverty students aren't getting the necessary funding. In fact, in most areas, high wealth areas get significantly more funding. And from the research, I just found that most of that is from your local funding or your state with the higher property taxes. And obviously, if they are poor, they are not paying property taxes on $1 million houses that will fund that school area. More equitable and adequate allocation of financial inputs to schooling provides a necessary underlying condition for improving the equity and adequacy of outcomes. Money matters, and it actually said that in this Barrett article. Money matters, and it does. While money is not truly the end-all be-all answer, he writes that more equitable schools with the highest need receive fewer resources. And so that's just something that needs to be addressed, in my opinion. And how can we make it equitable for all of the students and all of their needs? How does it address laws, policies, and regulations? Finance reforms in several states that lead to comparatively more equitable distribution systems. And so we're seeing more in the themes of finances. We're seeing more reforms happening right now, increased revenue for schools in higher poverty areas, and improved student outcomes. The ultimate goal is student outcomes, and hopefully our legislation is trying to see what they can do to improve our revenues, increase those revenues to those high poverty areas. Again, with my principal is part of the student and adult well-being, but only in ways that are free. So for instance, she tries to do incentives for teachers where she covers our lunch period, or she covers we get an extra plan period. She gives us ice cream sundaes. We celebrate Cinco de Mayo with tacos in the lounge. Those kinds of things that are ultimately free and don't have a budget line item are the ways that she helps with our adult success and our well-being. Next, data-informed decisions. How does this theme support student achievement and success? Principals who involve themselves in managing funds can determine the overall performance of the schools. And this was a very powerful statement when I was reading this article. I think of most principals being data-driven and being behaviorist, and we don't think of them much as financial decision makers. And ultimately, they can, when they involve themselves in managing the funds, they can allocate those funds to where they're most needed and help in the determination of the overall performance of the school. Financial management in a school is to provide accurate and current financial status of the school. And this kind of hit home for me because as the Title I reading specialist, I'm kind of head of all federal programs, which Title I, Title II, Title III. And I have to give a report to our superintendent and our board clerk at the end of the year with our para minutes and how we're spending those funds with parent collaboration, giving resources, things like that. And we have to make sure that our job is to definitely maintain clear records and know where all of the funds are allocated, when it's Title I, Title III, ESL. I have to keep very good record of where all those line items are going and whether it's going to Title I, Title III, and then even more specific into those funds as well. How did this theme address equitable school resource plans? And when I think of a resource plan, it's important for school administration to realize that the management goes beyond allocating cash items because it has to look at school as an investment, which would ultimately pay dividends as an investor. So going to a conference, I'm thinking, putting myself in the mind of a of a principal. And when a teacher comes in with a conference that they want to go to and they're requisitioning for a conference, one of my first questions is going to be what will this bring you? What will this bring us? And what will this bring our students? So, does this are you going to present at the next faculty meeting? Are you going to present at a PLC? Does this affect your team? How does this align with your professional goals? How does this align with our KISA goals? Making sure that those investments that I am allowed to make, even if it's as little as sending a teacher to the KSD conference for a week, that's expensive. But what are we getting from that? Are her fellow teaching mates going to also benefit from her going to this conference? Are her students going to benefit from the conference? And our KISA goals, our whole entire district going to benefit from this? So just making sure that our school resource plan is equitable, so all students are receiving what they need, but making sure that it provides an investment for our school. How did this theme address laws, policies, and regulations? School budgets are the law. Free public education is the law. We just need to know how. We need to make sure that our dollars are allocated, how they are supposed to be. ESSER funds are being spent how they are supposed to be, and we're following all of those laws and regulations. Okay, the next one is equitable resource plans. When I think of an equitable resource plan, I think of allocating and use of resources where all students benefit. All students is the main phrase in there, where even, am I allocating the people to the right wing of my hall, or am I allocating the money? Am I making a schedule that best fits the needs for all of my students? And this is where the student-based budgeting SBB article came in, and I thought this was the most, it went most with the equitable resources plans, because a lot of what that article is talking about fits into these questions. English language learners, students from high poverty, are we making sure that we're allocating those funds and we're receiving those dollars and we're putting them where we need to be? So the student-based budgeting is a financial system where students receive dollars based on the number of enrolled students and their individual needs. And so that's where the needs-based comes from. And it's giving the school leaders control over their budgets from there. SBB has the potential to change the game for students by increasing funding equity across schools and empowering principals to design schools to best meet the needs of their unique students. We don't have a high ESL population in my district, but we have a low socioeconomic percentage in my district. So I'm not going to go out and buy a lot of books in Spanish and just fill my library with books that are dual language. I'm going to make sure that those 8 ESL students I have are being addressed and their needs are being addressed, but I'm not going to spend a lot of my money. I'm going to spend a lot of my money where my most needs are, which is my low socioeconomic group. How does this theme address equitable school resource plans? Under strategic school design, school leaders identify their key student and teacher needs, implement an empowering, rigorous curriculum, and then reorganizing resources. So we talked about the people, the time, technology, money, schedules, to make a research-backed strategy. So making principals in charge of the budget isn't where changes necessarily happen, but it's what they do with those resources and that money that makes the change. Like I talked about the library books, putting more paras where they need to be, making sure the technology is where it needs to be, and we have all those resources in place. And how did this theme address laws, policies, and regulations? Financial transparency. I kind of talked about that before, but this allows for maybe I'm in a district where I don't have very good reading scores, and then I find out that I have a high percentage of students who have dyslexia or characteristics of dyslexia. So I may want to hire a reading specialist, a dyslexia specialist to come in, pull out groups, make sure my teachers are letters trained, finding out where that deficit is, and then filling that deficit with research-based resources that could help our students, and just being very transparent about how this purchase is going to address the school needs, how it's going to benefit our students. This SBB article was kind of hard for me to wrap my head around because I'm in such a small district that I'm not sure how this would apply to my district, just because we are my school is a K-12 school, actually pre-K through 12, and we have 300 students total, and there's no other schools in our district. So I was just kind of thinking about how this SBB formula would fit, and the only thing that I could kind of come up with was we have an elementary wing, a junior high wing, and then a high school wing. So we do have a group of readers that were in elementary school probably 5 years ago when I taught kinder, and they were very low readers. They were just very low across the board in reading, phonemic awareness, comprehension, all of the reading aspects. And that trend has followed them. And now they're in junior high. And I kind of talked to my principal about that. And I said, this is that class, that I had trouble with 5 years ago. Can we put a para up there? It's not typical that we have a full-time para in a 5th grade classroom, but I truly feel that, this para that we did have was very good with reading. She was very good at pull-out groups. She was very responsible and can hold groups of her own, and we could differentiate. And and so we put a full-time para in 5th grade, and this year they scored above, their average was above the state average. So things like that are how I could kind of see that SBB would come into play at my school. Okay, moving on to finance laws, policies, and regulations. Schools might play a minor role in achievement overall, but within schools, teachers play a major role. This comes from Brookings. It was a report that said focusing on teachers within a low-performing school is where the evidence points, and kind of to my story that I just told. Focusing on those teachers with low-performing schools scores is where most of those investments are going to happen, and then hopefully they pay off in the long run, especially in those, whether it be a struggling class, a struggling grade, or a struggling school in the bigger districts. How is the SEAM data informed? A report from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities in the late 2017 showed that in 29 states, funding had not returned to the levels after the recession in the late 2000s. It also concluded that local support has not been recovered from that period when property values dropped, therefore real estate tax revenue declined. And with that on the trend upward now, hopefully those level off. A study showed over the last 25 years that court orders or legislative action improved spending levels and decreased disparities, which led to improved student performances, particularly among low income students. So most of the basic education funding is still distributed without taking in account of district variables. It's distributed in an equal way among districts. It's not the SBB way. And it's very important I feel that it's very important for teachers or principals and leaders, superintendents, to be a part of the political realm and be invested in that, so that our legislators are hearing from us. They need to hear from us. They need to hear that we need more money, that we're allocating funds the best we can, but we're still coming up a little bit short, and just making sure that we're very transparent with them. And then how did this theme address laws, policies, and regulations? The Every Student Succeeds Act, and then the Betsy DeVos, when she cut the money from some after-school programs and some professional development, which was Title IV, I believe, that put $1 billion into private school vouchers for parents to decide that they want to homeschool their children. And I remember my principal saying, this is not going to be good. If this goes through, we're going to see, even in my small school, we're going to see people use those allocated funds, those vouchers, and put it in their pocket and essentially homeschool their kids. And that is kind of the case now, especially after COVID, where everybody is using that, the truancy excuses because of COVID. Here are my list of references. And when reflecting over this module, what did I learn before that I didn't? And I truly did not know the difference between decentralized and centralized budgets. Centralized budgets meaning that decisions are at the clerk level or the superintendent level group of administrators. It's a one-size-fits-all approach. It fails to address the unique needs and challenges across schools and communities, where the decentralized empowers principals to make the decisions on where to allocate those funds that were going to best meet their goals for their school. The influence decisions, how will I influence decisions that I will make as a school leader? I will always ask, does this purchase benefit student outcomes? And it may sound silly, but even those paper clips or even those student binders, is this ultimately for your need as a teacher to become more organized? Or is this going to allow more parent communication between the school and the teacher and the students? Because if so, then, we can talk about making that investment. But if you just don't like students buying their own folders because they're all different sizes and they are annoying you on their desk, then maybe, we need to talk about how we can address those needs without spending a line item on our budget. So just making sure I'm always asking those questions as a leader. How will this affect our students and our needs? And will this truly be an investment? I liked that question. Consider or concerns about being in charge of a school budget. I think my main concerns come from after COVID and seeing the money that was just thrown out there and all the stipulations, the ESSER money. I just am a little worried about the new laws and policies and regulations that are ever changing. I think that, like the ESSER funds that expire on such and such date and they can only be used for student growth, and is your computer program that the teachers are wanting in the elementary school, is that going to promote student growth? Am I going to breach a problem when I buy this math program with the ESSER funds? And I think that's just a concern that I have being part of the school budget. I like the idea of being a part of the school budget, being a part of it and making those decisions and giving my expertise, knowledge, and advice. But I think those dates and just the logistics of the new laws and policies is something that kind of is fearful to me. And I created this on Slides Go. Thank you very much for your time.